It's the UFO case that dominates all others, but it may only be half the story.
Roswell has always been an amazing mystery.
In July 1947, something crashes outside of Roswell, New Mexico. And days before, strange objects are sighted near the local Army airfield.
They were off the corner of that hangar there.
Now, the Roswell mystery takes an incredible turn. For the first time ever, physical evidence suggests that there wasn't one crash, but two.
Well, at first I wasn't sure it had anything to do with a UFO crash, but I started finding things.
Strange artifacts from the supposed location of the second crash.
Have you ever seen anything like this before?
Nothing of this shape and form.
After 61 years, a new witness steps forward.
Makes chills run down my back.
The real story behind Roswell waits to be unearthed.
And if I wanted to get rid of my UFO debris, this would be a nice place to put it.
This is case number 47402, The Real Roswell. Early July 1947. Roswell, New Mexico is a quiet city of just 26,000 people. The majority of the population are ranchers or military based at the nearby Roswell Army airfield. Little do any of them know, this sleepy town is about to receive a wake-up call. On July 6th, local rancher Mac Brazel reports to the local sheriff that he has found strange debris on the ranch where he works. Major Jesse Marcel from Roswell Army Airfield is sent out to investigate. He takes as much of the debris as he can fit in his truck back to the base. On July 8th, the Army issues a statement that they are in possession of a flying saucer. But after the debris is flown to Dallas, Texas that afternoon for further analysis, the Army states the debris is nothing but a misidentified weather balloon. The story quickly fades from memory. But in 1978, Stanton Friedman, a retired nuclear physicist, interviews Jesse Marcel, who has a somewhat different take on the story. Marcel reveals to Friedman that what was said that afternoon in Dallas on July 8, 1947, was actually a cover story. What he handled was definitely not a weather balloon. The Roswell mystery explodes. In the 15 years following Friedman's explosive interview with Jesse Marcel, cries of cover-up and conspiracy cloud the Roswell incident. Finally, in 1994, the government decides to tell all. The Air Force issues an official report saying that the debris recovered at Roswell was from a top-secret program called Project Mogul. These classified exercises were used to spy on Soviet missile and bomb tests. For many, the long-standing debate over what happened in 1947 in Roswell, New Mexico is put to rest. But some are not convinced. Now, there is another chapter to the Roswell story. In recent years, more and more UFO researchers are paying closer attention to a second reported crash that happened the same week as Roswell, 250 miles away on the plains of San Agustin. 61 years after these events, time is running out. Researchers rush to collect testimony and physical evidence before it disappears forever. Dr. Ted Ackworth will investigate the alleged second crash site in the plains of San Agustin.
This is the famous case. It's Roswell. It's probably the dominant UFO case of all history.
Bill Burns will meet with a researcher who's found a new witness from the original crash site, one who may have seen and handled the actual debris.
Roswell has always been for me an amazing mystery that ever since I was a kid, I've wanted to solve.
And Pat Uskert will search for physical evidence that is rumored to be hidden on remote ranches outside of town.
This is the ultimate UFO event to attend, Bill. You know, I can't believe we're here. I'm really excited about this.
This is when you want to study about UFOs in the United States, you come to Roswell, and this is where you begin.
We're here.
Bill begins by meeting Roswell researcher Dennis Balthaser, a local contact who details the new direction the investigation has taken.
There's an urgency about this. What is the urgency?
We're running out of time. We're talking about people that are in their 80s, if they're still alive, that were here, and the fact that we have nothing physical, really, for the Roswell incident. If there is metal out there, and I'm sure there is because of the number of guys that were at the crash site to help clean it up, it could be kept anywhere. I think looking at the plains of San Augustine and Roswell as a combination, or even separately, I think that needs to be worked some more.
The idea of a second crash site in the Roswell incident is a theory starting to gain traction. This possible second site, located in the plains of San Augustine, is approximately 250 miles from the main Roswell crash site. And this site could provide much-needed evidence to back up the Roswell incident. One of the biggest proponents of this theory is Stanton Friedman, the original investigator who broke the Roswell case wide open 30 years ago.
I had heard the first story about Roswell, and I had heard the first story about the plains of San Augustine. And I followed up on both, of course, and found sufficient other evidence to believe that there were at least two sites.
Where does it lead us with respect to multiple crash sites?
I think you needed to see the site, see how barren it is, the strange area it is, and notice that any pilot would come down in the middle of the plains instead of hit one of those mountains around there. Makes sense, that's what pilots do.
The story of this other crash happens in early July 1947 as well, though the exact date is still hotly debated. A man named Barney Barnett allegedly discovers a downed craft, including dead alien bodies, early one July morning. He claims the military arrives at the site soon after he does and orders him to keep quiet about what he's seen.
Remember, Barney was a World War I veteran. He worked for the Soil Conservation Service. It would be ridiculous to expect him to just go talking.
So what we have is a story that Barney Barnett was on the plains of San Augustine.
Found wreckage. There were people there, including an archaeologist and including students. And the military came along, told everybody to shut up. And they meant it very strongly. Remember, this is 47.
And you shut up when you were told to shut up.
That's right.
But why would there be two UFO crashes so close together during the same week? Is it possible they are linked in some way? The theories behind these alleged crashes need further analysis before the investigation visits either site.
Do we know anything about the relative positions of these debris fields? Are they scattered randomly across what kind of area, or are they in line? Or?
Well, most of the debris fields are around Roswell. They are around the main crash site. However, there's another one 200 miles away on the plains of San Augustine.
I mean, it seems pretty unlikely with a second crash site 200 miles away that it could be some sort of primary vehicle that hit and then bounced. I'm not familiar with any vehicles being able to bounce or debris bouncing like that.
Another theory is that there were two craft that maybe somehow collided in midair and created a sort of cue ball effect, where one craft exploded, rained debris down over the Roswell area, and the second craft exactly was sort of cue balled over to the plains of San Augustine. And so we have basically two craft and two crashes.
Linking the two crashes at Roswell and San Augustine will be a key focus of the investigation. Tom Carey, a researcher of the original crash, has uncovered a stunning new witness who claims he was at this site, a staff sergeant at Roswell Army Airfield in 1947. His name is Earl Fulford.
I called Earl Fulford 3 years ago. He was just a face in the base yearbook. I called his number and his wife answered. And much to my surprise, she said, "I'm glad you called. He's ready to talk."
Carey identified Earl through the official base yearbook from 1947. This is the first time he has ever spoken about the events he witnessed.
What happened to get you involved with this Roswell incident after you were on the base?
Well, it happened. We worked over here in the next hangar, and about 2 or 3 weeks before the incident, the people in town, especially, and some airmen here on the base, started seeing objects in the sky.
Oh, where were the objects?
They were off the corner of that hangar there.
Earl describes the objects as unlike any aircraft he had ever seen.
We looked up and there was 3 up there. They were circular and hung motionless, and we probably watched them for a couple minutes, and they suddenly disappeared.
And this was before anything ever happened on the ground?
That's right. It was within days, maybe a week, when the crash occurred.
This description doesn't match the appearance of the government's Project Mogul balloons, which had extremely long trains of various materials and were used primarily at high altitudes. Military servicemen would be unlikely to see them so low in the atmosphere, but spotting the strange orbs is only the beginning of Earl's story.
The next day, Sergeant Rosenberg came in the mess hall at 5 a.m. and got 12 or 15 or maybe 20 of us and loaded us up on an Army bus and took us to the debris field about 70 miles north of Roswell.
And what did you do there?
Picked up some debris of a very unusual shape and feel and appearance.
What was the debris that Earl Fulford and other volunteers picked up in 1947? The answer may still lie hidden beneath the desert.
Show no fear.
In Roswell, New Mexico, a new witness to the Roswell incident has come forward for the first time. Earl Fulford, a staff sergeant at Roswell Army Airfield in 1947, finds himself recruited for cleanup duty. But this is no ordinary cleanup. Pat and Bill are bringing Earl and researcher Tom Carey to the original Roswell crash site to get first-hand details about the debris recovered there on July 8, 1947. While they head to the first site, Ted is prepping the investigation's next step, a visit to a possible second crash site on the plains of San Augustine, 250 miles away.
Earl, if I want to go to the crash site, which way do I want to turn now?
You take a left right there on that road. It's in a high area like that over there.
Okay. What does it feel like going back?
Feel elated to be able to do something like this at 82 years old. Show no fear.
After nearly 3 hours of driving, including an hour off-road, the team arrives at their destination. This is the famous Roswell crash site. On this barren landscape, many claim history was made. Right here, for the first and so far only time, the United States military admitted to finding a UFO, only to change its story days later.
So, Earl, do you remember this site?
Yes, we picked up material here in about a 1 square mile area.
So you were here pretty much the whole day?
Yeah, the bigger part of a day.
Earl describes the field as a fan, spreading out over 1 square mile. And according to him, the debris was everywhere.
Vehicles all drove up and formed a circle. We started walking in one direction. We went about 10, 12, 15 apart, where I could see what you could see, and you could see what I could see, so we wouldn't miss anything. Well, I seen some type of material or metal or something that looked sort of like aluminum. It was shreds and pieces.
Now, when you picked it up and tried to put it in your sack, what happened?
Well, my personal experience was great surprise when I picked up a piece and I wadded it up to put in my bag, and before I could get it there, it came back to its original shape.
Wow.
And I took it out and I wadded it up again, and same thing.
Other witnesses have explained what happened when people brought debris back from this very site, but Earl was there at the beginning. He saw the material on the ground. He explained the shock when he picked up a piece of what looked like foil, tarnished chrome foil, crushed it in his hand, went to put it in the sack, and it popped open again. About how many pieces do you think that you gathered in your own gunny sack?
I would say I picked up 10, 12, maybe 15 pieces. But once it went in those bags, we never seen it again.
Do you remember what Army personnel took possession of the bags?
They were military police.
It is the last time Earl will see or hear of the debris.
They told me up there if I showed anyone or told anyone, I was in deep trouble.
We've gotten a new perspective on Roswell today because Earl Fulford was able to explain to us what it was like being here. Now we can go to the next step.
I don't know if we'll have any luck finding any more witnesses, and I don't think we can find a witness better than Earl Fulford. So the thing I would want to do now is see if there's any way we can come up with even the smallest bit of debris.
With this first-hand information from Earl, Ted looks at creating an experiment with conventional materials to see if anything that was unconventional at the time might explain what these crews were picking up. The fact that the military got to this site quickly and removed the alleged debris has frustrated UFO researchers for years. But what if they were not the first to arrive? There are rumors that local ranchers like Mac Brazel got to the crash site before the military. And according to Tom's research, they may have actually collected some of the wreckage and hidden it in nearby caves.
What we're trying to do is see if there's any truth to these stories, maybe in the caves.
Pat heads out to meet Sue Manis, a local rancher whose family has been here since the Roswell incident.
So there are other people who come out here looking for the debris.
Oh, yes.
Well, we'd like to take a stab at investigating this ourselves, and we're hoping maybe you could help us find some of these caves.
Well, I will try to help you find some of the caves. Some are easy to find, some are caved in.
You think there's a chance that maybe some of this debris is in the caves?
Where there's rumor, there is a potential for the truth.
According to Sue's family, her uncle was one of the first at the crash site. She points Pat in the direction of a nearby cave, one that her uncle supposedly visited often. One theory is that he may have been able to take some of the debris with him and hid it there for safekeeping. Pat heads out to search, and after several attempts, finds a promising site.
And if I wanted to get rid of my UFO debris, this would be a nice place to put it.
Pat's descent must be cautious. The only thing to secure his line to is a small piece of desert brush. There is no established route down into the cave.
Got it.
And there's no way to know what might be inside.
Damn it. Okay, well, we're gonna have a look and see what's in here. Well, I've just discovered that the rumors are true. There are underground caves here near the Mac Brazel debris field, and these would be a great place for people to stow away this debris if they wanted to hide it from military personnel. Whether or not the debris is actually down here, we'll see. I can tell from this layer of silt here that this is all probably rain drainage that probably comes through this tunnel. We can see it on the outside. This is as far as the tunnel goes. All I have is hard walls of quartz and a silty floor. That's all I found down in this cave.
Many don't realize that these caves below the desert even exist, and Pat's discovery of a cave near Sue's ranch puts the rumors into perspective. Not only do they make ideal hiding places, these caves are everywhere.
These ranges are so vast, it might take months to find all the caves around here that are around the debris field.
Despite this confirmation, after 60 years, the alleged first crash site still has not yielded any debris. But the first physical evidence that could point to a UFO has emerged from the second crash.
Looks like organic form.
For years, the Roswell crash has dominated this tiny city and the nearby ranches. But few have paid attention to another alleged UFO crash story 250 miles west in the plains of San Augustine that reportedly happened the same week of July 1947. The investigation's next step is to visit this second crash site and determine if it has any connection to Roswell.
We're going to meet with Art Campbell, researcher who's been studying this second site thoroughly. Apparently, there's all kinds of scientific evidence here to support this theory of a second crash site. Basically, I'm here to look at it and see if there's any credence to this claim.
So what makes you think this site has something to do with a UFO crash?
Well, at first I wasn't sure it had anything to do with a UFO crash, but I started finding things.
Campbell uncovers several different artifacts during a dig in 1995. He cross-references his dig's location with the story of Barney Barnett, who claimed to have found a UFO crash site in this area in July 1947.
Barney Barnett was a local soil conservation engineer, and he had a district that was 70 miles long, 72 miles wide, and he was assigned to help farmers with conservation projects, which is one of the main highways he drove on. Saw something glinting in the sun. He told friends and relatives he thought it was a plane crash, and he knew a way in, so he drove over there as fast as he could get there, and came over a small rise and looked down on this UFO, split on one side, a couple bodies outside.
What happened to the vehicle and the bodies?
He was there probably a half hour, 45 minutes, and some archaeologists came up.
According to Barnett's account, these archaeologists are returning from a nearby dig when they stumble upon Barney and the UFO crash site. In his research, Campbell located corroborating documents for Barnett's claim. According to this letter from the Peabody Museum at Harvard University, archaeologist Herbert W. Dick was working at Bat Cave in the plains of San Augustine in the summer of 1947. Bat Cave is in close proximity to the site where Art performed his dig.
Then the Army drove up in several vehicles, said, oh, this site is secure, and chased them off.
And again, this was a completely separate crash site. He didn't see the crash at Roswell.
But what evidence exists that something crashed in the plains of San Augustine?
Right, so the theory is that some craft crashed into this, crashed into the earth. It would have left a long gouge, wouldn't it have?
I estimate the gouge to be maybe about 200 feet long.
And then you think mixed up in the soil here would be some components of the vehicle or wreckage?
I believe that's the case, yes. Whatever it was came into that sagebrush and cut a swath through it.
The site had numerous artifacts that Campbell collected after persistent and thorough digging. This is the first time he's been back to the site in almost 5 years. He specifically requests that the actual location not be revealed.
Great.
Now, I've seen this stuff at Roswell. Researchers have researched Roswell for years, but this is all new information. Not too many people know about this site here in San Augustine, so we'll be the first to really investigate this area with Art Campbell. So you're saying this is where Barney Barnett said the crash was?
Yes, I am.
What about the archaeologists? Is this also where they saw the object?
The archaeologists came from this direction. That's where Bat Cave is.
But the presence of Bat Cave was just circumstantial, so Art turned to an archaeological dig to find physical proof of a crash.
So in theory, the object came and crashed in from what direction?
A flat direction from the northeast.
And right, came and crashed through here.
Right. That's what we figure, yeah.
Before his excavation, Campbell took aerial photographs of the area. Several former water channels can be seen moving on a southwestern course. But Campbell noticed a separate gap moving in the opposite direction of these natural courses and focused his dig here.
How did you determine that this area here was a trench?
Because the soil was different. I had 21 test holes dug one evening, 7 up each side of the sagebrush and 1 down the center where we're standing. The soil in the center of this was different.
And that gave you sort of the hunch that something was going on here.
That's correct.
The way Art describes the case is the vehicle came in. You can see a bit of a, what seems to be an alley through the sage. It could be natural. It could be caused by some effect. For example, a filled area where the sage doesn't want to grow back into. So it's relatively consistent. That could be a natural effect. I can't prove it either way.
But one of the artifacts that Art uncovered in his dig may provide the necessary proof.
Let's have a look at these artifacts you recovered.
This was the piece I found under the sagebrush that kicked the whole investigation off.
Right. Huh, look at that.
I was out here digging.
Well, it certainly looks like something in sort of an organic form or melted.
Campbell uncovers the artifact in the same gap that he believes indicates a UFO crashed here. It is smooth, lightweight, and appears to have melted or collapsed in on itself.
Didn't dare think it was anything unusual. I took it up to the restaurant here and put it in front of two cattle inspectors, and they said, that ain't no part of no cow, and I was off and running with my research.
Have a look at that.
Wow, that is really weird looking.
What I really want to do is get this artifact back to the lab and test it. I mean, to me, it's the most intriguing aspect of this case. First thing, I want to know what it's made of. Is it organic? Is it inorganic? Again, we're just looking for something really unusual here, or is it all explainable?
With the fieldwork complete, the investigation moves to an experiment that will put both the government explanation and the eyewitnesses to the test.
You got something there.
In 1947, for one day, the U.S. military said that it had recovered a flying saucer. Days later, they recant. Then, in the 1990s, they admit something did crash. But it was a top-secret military experiment called Project Mogul. After visiting 2 alleged UFO crash sites, the investigation is attempting to test the government explanation for the Roswell incident, a Project Mogul balloon. Pat is meeting with Michael Keene, a military tactics expert and lecturer at the University of Southern California, to discuss this much-debated answer for Roswell.
At that time, the United States had a monopoly on atomic weapons. But what if, unknown to the United States, the Soviets had acquired an atomic bomb? What we really feared was an atomic Pearl Harbor or a nuclear 9/11. And so we undertook a crash program called Project Mogul.
Now, most people that have looked into Roswell know about Project Mogul, but maybe you can give me some details as to why that's such a valid explanation.
It wasn't just one balloon, it was a string of 20 to 30 weather balloons, followed by an extensive payload, followed by maybe half a dozen radar reflectors. It was an extensive operation.
Originally, Project Mogul used long strings of rubber weather balloons to carry microphones and radio transmitters. These tools were sent high into the atmosphere to listen for sound waves from Soviet missile and bomb tests.
This is probably close to 700 feet long, which is, greater than half the height of the Eiffel Tower.
But would it really look like debris? I mean, these guys clearly described very strange debris that they've never seen before.
As part of the payload dropped off, the balloon could rise again, the winds could drag it, it could fall again. It could create multiple type of debris sites, or an extensive debris field for that matter.
So this might explain these multiple crash sites.
Absolutely, sure.
If the Mogul balloon is the real explanation for Roswell, then eyewitnesses who handled the debris should be able to identify the mylar foil used in the radar reflectors. But many describe a strange memory metal that is both lightweight and able to return to its original form. What did these witnesses handle? At Wonderworks, a special effects house located in Los Angeles, Bill has brought in 2 eyewitnesses for the test. Earl Fulford, who claims to have handled the debris at the alleged first crash site, and Jesse Marcel Jr., who says he handled material when his father, Major Jesse Marcel, brought some of the debris home from the crash site.
We've collected a number of different materials that seem to match roughly the descriptions from our 2 witnesses. We're going to bring in each witness independently and see if they can positively ID the material they were handling back in 1947.
I got a handful of different metals here. We're starting off with 32,000s magnesium. Same with steel, aluminum, also steel, but this isn't 5,000s. You can see it's quite flexible and flat. This is actually cardboard at 32,000 and 5,000s acetate with kind of an aluminum finish to it. And this is mylar, also with an aluminum film to it.
Earl, the first subject, is brought in to look at the materials.
Take a turn on each piece and tell me yes or no, does it look or feel like the piece of metal from 1947?
No. It's a little too thick.
Let's do the next one.
This one is too heavy. The color is close, but weight is too much. Okay. This material now was almost weightless.
Let's do the next one.
Too stiff. This one is closer, but it doesn't feel like I could fold it up. This one doesn't resemble it in any way. This one feels more like the material. The material we got, we could wad up and it would pop back just about like that's doing now.
You just when you feel like the thickness is about right, the weight.
Thickness and the weight.
And the stiffness.
Makes chills run down my back.
And let's get this last one.
Definitely not.
You mentioned something that was really intriguing to me, which is this idea that you tried to crumple it up, put it back in your bag. Can you try actually doing it and see if you can get that same effect?
You got something there. That's definitely as close as what I've seen.
The acetate seems to be a close match for what Earl experienced. But according to the official Roswell report released in 1994, this type of acetate was not used in the construction of Project Mogul balloons. Only acetate tape was used, which bears no resemblance to the form of acetate being tested. But if a balloon didn't crash at Roswell, what did? Another eyewitness may confirm or deny the findings so far.
Well, we have one more witness, one of the most famous of the Roswell witnesses, Jesse Marcel Jr.
The night that my dad brought the material home, I looked at all this material on the floor. The first thing he said was, "Look at this, because you'll probably never see this again."
Now remember, this is a blind test, so let's not lead on about any of these early findings with Earl.
This is a sheet metal. Now what I saw was not really like a sheet metal, more like foil, so this is much too thick.
Too thick.
Now these are sheet metal. What I saw, the foil was not sheet metal. This is getting close to the feeling of the thickness of it. It was not as shiny as this, though. It was a little more dull than this, but this is closer to the actual thickness.
Let's have a look at this one last.
Okay. Now this is very insubstantial. This is like a real thin foil. The foil that I saw was much thicker than this, but it actually had about the same weight, though. It was thicker, but about the same weight.
Almost weightless.
As this. It's almost weightless, like it'd float down like that in air.
Right.
But does the acetate also display the memory metal properties that Jesse's father described?
You want to try and crumple it?
Doesn't stay crumbled.
Is that what he described?
Yeah, this is basically what he described.
Unbeknownst to either of them, both Earl and Jesse have identified acetate as the material closest to what they handled back in July 1947.
The amazing thing is that both of them zeroed right in on the acetate. It's plain as day to me that they both found the thickness, the malleability, and the overall weight of the acetate to be like a one-to-one match. This has been really productive. When you think of people back in 1947 handling acetate, that sounds like a pretty revolutionary material back then.
That's the amazing thing for me, is that it was the simple solution. We kept looking for something more exotic.
Acetate is a popular component in film stock, adhesive tape, and synthetic fabrics. As early as 1910, it was used as a glue-like liquid to coat and strengthen fabric aircraft wings and fuselages. But acetate in a strip or sheet form was not used in any known aircraft in the 1940s.
There's no acetate in a Project Mogul balloon. So what did we prove today? We did prove something. We proved that two witnesses who didn't know each other, who were there at the time, identified the exact same material.
If the unknown material handled by eyewitnesses was acetate, is it from an entirely different classified project? This strange artifact could shed more light on what happened at two different sites in New Mexico in 1947.
It must have been an explosion.
Two eyewitnesses who claim to have handled debris in Roswell have identified acetate as the closest match for what they saw in 1947. But acetate was never used in a Project Mogul balloon. In effect, these witnesses have all but eliminated the government's Mogul balloon explanation. So the question still remains, what crashed in 1947 and what was it made of. If the second crash in San Augustine is truly linked to Roswell, the final analysis of this artifact may hold the answers. Ted brings the artifact to SEAL Labs in Los Angeles, and Dr. Aaron Kumar, a metallurgy and sample processing expert, for a closer examination.
I brought the specimen in. We're looking forward to showing it to you. Here it is.
Wow, what is it?
This came out of an archaeological dig, and the site may have been a crash site. We're not sure. This is one of the more unusual or difficult to explain artifacts that came up out of the site.
It does look pretty unusual.
And we're just trying to get a sense of what it could be. Is it organic? Is it man-made? Is it natural?
Well, we'll test it and figure this out. I think we should do a variety of tests on this.
These tests will help prove conclusively what the object is made of. The artifact is smooth to the touch, and at just 4 ounces is extraordinarily lightweight. But initial looks reveal several cracks and folds that suggest there may be multiple layers to the object.
You see there's all kinds of folds and sort of crevasses. Have you ever seen anything like this before?
Nothing of this shape and form. Obviously, it looks pretty unusual.
You know, cracked open areas of fissures might have some material down inside that we could pull out.
Right.
While Ted and Dr. Kumar take a closer look inside the object, 2 samples of the artifact are tested to determine what the object is made of, as well as its melting point. Knowing what temperature is needed to melt the object could give a clue as to the conditions that led to it taking this form.
We have this object here which we need to examine in the electron microscope.
Also, if you know, some of these crevasses, there looks to be some bits of material or a powder down there.
Ted and Dr. Kumar locate a few particles to examine from inside the object. Running these particles through the scanning electron microscope shows a breakdown of its basic elements.
Okay, so what we see here is a large amount of oxygen and carbon, which will be component from the organic material. And it also contains quite a bit of filler material, so to say. A bit of this material comes from sand and soil and dirt as well.
Nothing anomalous is found from the particle inside the object. But the results of the artifact's makeup prove surprising.
Hey. Hi.
What did you find?
I got a nice clean spectrum, and it's ran through a database, and it's clearly polyethylene.
Polyethylene.
And even more so, it has a high melting point that is about 130 degrees C, which means it's high density polyethylene.
What would that come from? What would be common containers or?
Tupperware.
But HDPE, or high-density polyethylene, isn't used commercially in products like Tupperware until the early 1960s, and the material itself isn't officially invented until 1953, 6 years after the alleged crashes at Roswell and San Augustine. If Art Campbell found the artifact at the site of the second crash, it either found its way to the middle of the desert sometime after 1953, or it's part of a crash that happened 6 years before its invention. Today, HDPE is not only used in commercial products, but also to make fuel tanks and aircraft windows. How could something with such a high melting point become so deformed?
This was found in the desert in New Mexico, which is hot, but nothing gets that hot.
That's 250 degrees Fahrenheit, something like that?
Even in direct sunlight. So we know this didn't melt just based on environmental conditions.
Correct.
It must have been put into a fire or an explosion or something to elevate its heat.
Yes, that's true.
You know.
Project Mogul didn't use acetate or any other material like it. And now the remote site of a second crash contains material that may have been in an explosion.
We know the desert environment in that area never gets over 110, 120 degrees Fahrenheit, but we also know that HDPE doesn't melt below 130 Celsius. So I wonder, how did this object get melted in the desert there? It would have to have been something like a fire or an explosion to reach those temperatures.
This provides an entirely new perspective. For years, the government denies anything happened at Roswell, but then admits to secret tests. Now, this physical evidence raises serious doubts about those final explanations.
When you put all the pieces together, multiple crash sites, credible witnesses that can finally come out and tell the truth after all these years, you have something that's just too big to be a simple cover-up of a military accident.
And the mogul explanation also cannot account for Earl Fulford's sighting days before the crashes even occur.
Even before the UFOs hit the ground, they were there in the air. And for me, that explains the relationship among all these various crash sites, that there was more than one craft.
61 years after the incident at Roswell, new evidence continues to emerge. Is this a different military program still classified today? Or is the government still not telling us the truth about UFO crashes in New Mexico?